Party Atlanta, welcome to Carl Weathers!
I was expecting a little more. I fell asleep there for a second. And they said, "You're on." Okay, here I am.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us here in Atlanta and for taking part in another Q&A with Mad Monster.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here in Atlanta after so many years. Some of you may or may not remember that years ago, Carol O'Connor shot a show down here called In the Heat of the Night. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to know Carol prior to that. Met him through Burgess Meredith, and Carol asked me to be a part of the show. So I got a chance to spend a little time down here in the Atlanta area, in Conyers, and we did a show that I think a lot of people loved and still love today. So good to be back.
Well, thank you again for joining us. So I have a few questions I'll ask, and then we'll open up to the audience here in about 10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, have them ready, have your hand up nice and high, and we'll get to as many of you as we can. But let's go ahead and start. So, of course, you're very well known for your work as an actor, as a director now as well too. And you got your start though playing football. Can you talk a little bit about that? And because if I remember correctly, you also did some theater in college as well too during that period.
All the above. Well, the long short story is I did the first play I ever did when I was a kid in grade school. And anybody in here who knows that you do something and you get applause for it, it kind of sticks with you and encourages you in many ways to want to do more of it. And so I did that first play, which was, 5th or 6th grade, and got bitten by the bug. Actually, the truth is, I did a play before that, one of those pageant plays, where kids are dressed up with weird and pantaloons and all that kind of crazy stuff and tights. And finally, as I matriculated and went through secondary school and all that, I fell in love with football, and football was probably physically, even though I tried out and made every sport in junior high, the only thing I was really good at was football. But those coaches were generous, I think, because I was the kind of kid who I just tried hard. I just wanted to be successful at something. And despite the fact that I wasn't the best at a lot of those, I made the teams. But football was kind of my wheelhouse, so did that and got a scholarship to an all-men's Catholic school in New Orleans, which is where I grew up. And then I left there just before my senior year, between junior and senior year, and moved to Long Beach, California. I had a grandmother who doted on me, and I'd been there and visited, and wow, it was so beautiful and so open, and so many things that I appreciated. And I went there and then went to finish high school at Long Beach Polytechnic. Long Beach Poly is well known for a lot of athletes who've gone through there, and a number of them have made it to the NFL. And from there, I went to Long Beach City College because I thought football was over. I was going to do something different. But as soon as I got there, what happened? The coaches came to me. I started playing football again, and had a teacher there who encouraged me to go and try out for a play. God only knows why, but seriously must have seen something in me, and I went and I did that. And I got the role in the play, and did that, and then I got a scholarship to San Diego State. Don Coryell was the head coach. Played at San Diego State, made that team, and majored in theater.
Yeah.
And that's how it all began. And here we are all these years later, and I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. Cool. Now, you've played a number of iconic roles over the years. Of course, most notable, Apollo Creed.
That's not the most notable. Come on. It's one of the most.
One of the most notable.
People love all those characters, am I right? Get it right.
Yes. But can you talk a little bit about being cast in that as that character?
Well, the misnomer, I think, for a lot of people is that if you work in quote unquote Hollywood, you've made it. Well, I after football, after I decided, I played with the Oakland Raiders, and then I went to Canada and played in Canada for 3 years, CFL, and there came a point where I wasn't having fun doing that anymore. I was getting beaten up, and my body was aching, and I was still very young, of course, but in football, and particularly professional football, 3 or 4 years, man, you've been beaten. And because you went through junior high school, college, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of years of being pounded on. And I also just had this yearning to do what I really wanted to do, which was be an actor. And I'd had some San Francisco experience and some success in San Francisco, and did a play or two in San Francisco, and decided I was okay, that I was going to go to Hollywood and give myself a year to make it. Well, I say naivete because there are people who work their entire lives at something and never quite make it, if you know what I mean. But I was real fortunate. I started working within about 6 months of going to Los Angeles, and I was fortunate because it didn't stop. I worked a lot of television in the early years, everything from Streets of San Francisco to Kung Fu to Del Vecchio to Canon, SWAT, Good Times. I mean, a lot of different shows, and that kind of stuff really just helps an actor, a young actor in my mid-20s, to really feel that there's possibility. And then this movie came along, which at the beginning, people don't realize this was a script. That is, the history with Stallone and all that sort of stuff, and he didn't want to sell it outright. He wanted to be a part of it, and made the deal to star in the movie. Well, they didn't want to see Carl Weathers because I was nobody. I was just a struggling actor, as they say, right? Working a lot of television. I'd done a few movies, but nothing that really exploded onto the scene. And they wanted a boxer who could act. And so they went after people that they couldn't get. And finally, someone slipped me a script because I couldn't get one through normal channels. And I read the script and bang, I just knew that this was me. I was a young kid growing up, you're emulating Ali, and everybody wants to dance around and be Muhammad Ali, or beat the guy who's beating Muhammad Ali. Well, I thought I could do it, even though I'd never boxed. And so I got an interview finally, and went in and told them that I boxed, and gave them this long story about when I was in Canada playing ball. In the off season, I would do club boxing, and I'd never boxed in my life. But I believed I could do it, and they had me read for them, and apparently that went over well enough that they said, okay, well, let's put him in the ring. So they sent me out on an excursion, and I remember like it was yesterday, in Santa Monica, California. There used to be this gym there, and I went into the ring with a real boxer, a guy named Frankie Crawford, who was a middleweight. He wore me out. I mean, if you've never boxed before, one of the things that really kills a lot of people is they don't know how to relax. You gotta relax when you're throwing punches, because if you don't, the tension alone will wear you out. Just holding your arms up, 3-minute rounds, it's a lot longer than you think it is. So by the end of 3 minutes, I could hardly lift my arms, but I could move, I could dance, I was athletic, and Frankie and one of the other guys went back and told him, I think he could do it. Lo and behold, I got the role of Apollo Creed, and as they say, the rest is history.
Now, what was that production schedule like? There's not a lot of rehearsals typically in film, but what's something like that where you have a lot of choreography with your movements? Was this a situation where there was rehearsals going into it, and what was that like?
Great question, because without so-called rehearsal time, there's just no way we could have done that. I mean, we had to choreograph everything. So whatever you see there, I would say 98% of it is worked out ahead of time. We had, I think on the first movie, maybe a month and a half to figure out the choreography. But you had to be in shape before you even did that. So I was fortunately constantly in shape in those days. I think I was at the time maybe 26. That's a baby, okay? And so your body is just in the kind of shape where just normally walking the street, if you don't have health problems, you're in pretty decent shape. You can go longer than a lot of people can. But, to get in the kind of physical shape to do it, and then muscular shape, because basically you're walking around in your underwear on screen, right? In boxing shorts. So with the ego that most of us have, there ain't no way in hell I want to look like I'm not in the best shape in the world, right? So we trained and trained and trained. I certainly did. I was in the gym, and at times I would fast and truly train 3 times a day in a gym called Vince's Gym with the old Vince Gironda, who was one of the old-time bodybuilders who really taught me a lot. And then, of course, when we went in to actually do the movie after I had the job, it took us, as I said, about a month and a half to choreograph it.
Yeah.
And for Sly and I to get in the ring and figure out how we needed to throw these punches and make it look real. And of course, then John Avildsen is involved, the director, one of the greatest directors I've ever worked with. And man, we just hammered at it. And then finally, when we got to shoot it, you want to shoot that first because you're in great shape. It's all fresh in your mind. If you got hurt before the end of the movie and you got to shoot it, then you're in bad trouble. So we shot that first, and it was about a week, maybe 8 days, 12, 14 hours a day in the ring every day. Each of us had a masseur because the body just, after a certain amount of time, doesn't want to function properly. So you have to have somebody just constantly working on your body, and then you're hot and then you're cold, and you're hot and then you're cold between takes. So it was a fascinating grind, and I don't think most people can really appreciate what it took to just do those fights and make them look believable. And the good news, you got to give credit where it's due, is Sly had written a great script, but we had a great director and we had a great cameraman, and we had maybe the second movie where Steadicam was utilized as much as it was. Steadicam, which is that device where the camera is mounted on kind of a jib, and whoever is operating it can move it around and it looks smooth and it doesn't look all jiggly with handheld. Well, man, without that, because that made everything just look like you were sitting there in the audience and believing what was going on. We were really fortunate in so many ways, and thank God throughout my career I've had a lot of good fortune.
Now, of course, outside of acting, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, you, of course, have gone on to have a great career as a director as well, too. And so, working on films like Rocky or Predator, where you're around these talented directors as well, too, how much were you, at that point, starting to, at what point in your career did you start thinking, I could do this, I could tell these stories?
I think most of us always think we can do what everybody else is doing, despite how little talent we have for it, or acumen, or focus, or just courage. Sometimes just to step into another arena, so to speak, really requires a lot of courage and or ignorance and naivete, because you got to believe you can do it. That's the first thing, and then you just, for me anyway, sports taught me so much. And when you're doing that as a young kid in particular, or even when I became a professional as an athlete, I don't know that most of us realize how really and truly important it is to, first of all, have tremendous confidence, and secondly, a tremendous amount of patience. Because nothing that you can master, you can do in one day, or one take, or just with one job. Mastery doesn't come from that. Mastery comes over a long period of time, And over that period of time, you develop those skills sets that are necessary. You become a greater student at something, so you start to watch people who do that well, whose work you appreciate, and you begin to learn about, I think maybe more than anything else, becoming a great observer of what's going on around you, So over a period of time, to answer your question, I found that there was a challenge in directing that I had never expected. And out of sports came the same thing. You know, with sports, technique can really supersede so many things. If you have the physical acumen for whatever it is, tennis. I watched a video just this morning of someone with table tennis who could hit a ball and make it curve around a table, and there are a bunch of cartons, and one of them had a cutout, and the ball went into the carton with the cutout. How many hours every day must you practice that to become efficient at doing that? Just that one thing. It's not like just getting it on the table, but he's got to hit the other side of the table, it curves around and comes in a little hole. Man, that takes dedication. That's where that patience thing comes in. That dedication thing comes in. And the rest of it is just, you got to be courageous enough to believe it's going to happen. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. And so that became really, for me, kind of the mantra. And with directing, practice it every day, man. Just practice it every day, you know. It's never going to be perfect until you're laid to rest. Then it's perfectly over. But the rest of it is, you know, you just stay at it and stay at it. So that and loving what I do. Loving the directing is a big part of it.
Now you have had several projects, a number of projects where you have both acted in front of the camera and been the director behind the camera as well too. What are the challenges in that and doing both roles in the same production?
Again, courage is so important in everything. And it's not blind courage. You know, if you've been successful at anything, then you've had success. I don't care what it is. You could have played tiddlywinks. You can utilize that success to say, wait a minute, if I can do that, and guess what? I can grow and do this. I can get better at this. I can be much better than I am today. Now, if you're dedicated, man, you're home free. But that dedication can't be wavering. It's got to be unwavering, along with confidence in oneself and desire to do that thing. And at the end of the day, you got to love the process, because we all know that no one can dictate what the outcome is going to be. That's impossible. But the process, I don't care what it is, if it's getting down on your knees every morning or every night praying, that's a part of the process. You ain't got to guarantee that what you're praying for you're going to get. But the process, that teaches you something, and that in itself leads to something. So for me, whether it's acting or directing or whatever that thing is, the process has become something that I am invested in, married to, will continue no matter what. And that's how I get better at what I do. So how is it that when you're in front of the camera and you're behind the camera directing yourself, I've had a certain amount of success in front of that camera. I know what to do there. I don't have to question myself. The directing is where you suddenly say, wait a minute, it's not about me, the actor anymore, or even the director. It's about the project. So I have to learn to integrate what I do as a director in telling that story and utilizing the skills of this actor, the same person, but with a bifurcated kind of focus, right? I have to understand how to utilize this guy to the best in every scene and in every project, but also I've got to work with other actors. So I have to also know what I want to get out of them and how to get it best and get the best performance out of them, and utilize all those characters to best tell the story. And as the director, the skill is really just to tell the damn story. My directorial has nothing to do with your acting. It's just I'm helping you become a better actor and telling the part of the story that you're involved in. So all those mind games, if you will, is what I'm doing as a director.
Now, what do you look for? What draws you to either a character or to a script that you want to tell a story through?
Well, another good question. For me, and I think probably for most actors, that what you're really looking for is you're looking for a character that has the possibility of being a complete person, if you will. You know, nobody is a villain. That's not the way people see themselves. The most despicable person on the planet believes in what they're doing for whatever their reasons are. And the most loving person on the planet can do very despicable things, maybe in private, but we all possess this wide range of behavioral actions. So when I look for a character, I want to see something that has this arc in it, that's fleshed out, that's all that it can be. And what I'm trying to show as an actor then are shadings of the personality and the multiple personalities that we all can display at one time or another. If it's written well, off to the races, you know. But you got to bring something to the table too, as the performer, as the actor. So I'm looking for all of that and also a story that resonates for me.
Nice. Cool. Well, I could go on forever asking questions, but I know you guys have a lot of
Clearly,
questions
so
as
can
too. So let's go ahead and get to some audience questions. If you have a question, raise your hand up nice and high. We'll get a microphone over to you, sir. Spider-Man? Yeah. Oh, we'll get a microphone to you.
What's it like working with Pedro Pascal?
Wow. Fantastic. I mean, you know, I haven't worked with too many people that I haven't enjoyed working with. Good grief, over the years, how many, man, and how many names, you know, some of them no longer with us, but so many great actors and great roles. That's so many people I've worked with that have inspired me in a way, you know, and sometimes just you can be on stage with someone, man, and they can take you to another level because their work is so good. So, yeah, fantastic is the answer.
Next one. Right over here, you miss? Ours? Yeah. Right there.
Hi, Mr. Weathers. What do you think about Michael B. Jordan and the Creed series?
I think he's done a wonderful job. I think he's taken that role and squeezed as much blood out of it as you possibly could. The movies, you know, the funny thing about movies is when movies do really well at the box office, there's a reason. It's not that people don't have other choices. So clearly, people are enjoying what he's doing, and the foundation that was laid, I guess, really resonates with people in such a great way that we can all kind of, you know, stay alive through Michael B. So I give him lots of props. Lots of props.
Right back there in the back, sir.
Hello there, Mr. Weathers. Have you seen the Rocky IV director's cut?
Wow, I get asked that almost every week. No, I haven't. Sorry to say.
I highly recommend you do.
I've heard that.
It's a much different movie.
I've heard that.
And it really fleshes out you and Rocky's relationship and his loss.
Oh.
And it really beefs up your character as well.
Well,
And it's also the same length.
Yeah, I thank you. Look, one of the wonderful things about a movie like Rocky is, in so many ways, and I'm not taking credit for this, I just think we hit a sweet spot in terms of the zeitgeist of that time, 1976, 1977, you know. 70s, by the way, some of the greatest movies we've had the fortune of getting a chance to see and be a part of. 70s, man, what a run, you know. Great directors, great actors, great stories being told, and sort of a transitional period in not only the country but in filmmaking. A lot of the technology that was developed, you know, was kind of as a result of a lot of those movies. But Rocky in particular, no matter where I've gone in the world, it is fascinating to me how that movie has resonated no matter what country I've been in. You know, and people, of course, who don't speak English, needless to say, you've got subtitles, and then, of course, people are doing, you know, voiceover to translate the movies, and you know, as your character. But man, the impact is the thing that's been so gratifying, to be a part of something that's had such amazing impact and brought people together over something like a movie. You know, a movie and a movie character, not a real person, but apparently as delivered, that character has endeared himself to so many for so many years now. We'll be going into 50 years in 3 more years.
That's amazing.
So it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Yes, right here in the front.
What was it like working with Sly? Did you guys learn off each other while doing the movie?
Well, what was it like working with Sly? It was like working with every other actor. You know, when people are invested in what they're doing and really enjoying it and wanting it to be good, it's inspiring, man. It's just inspiring. It's always, no matter who you're working with, you're really only as good as the material. And the material was so good. You know, and then we had such smart people that were involved. I give so much credit to John Avildsen because I'll give you an example, you know, anecdotally. In the very first movie, there were a number of times where it was challenging making transitions where a character is going from point A to point B, and you don't have a lot of what I call pipe laid. You know, you're saying something, you're doing something, and then bang, you got to change it and be someplace else. And I remember John, more than anybody else, really had such a great facility as a director. Something I learned from John, really. And John Avildsen, if you aren't familiar with him, directed some great movies. One of the first that I remember John directing was a movie called Joe with Peter Boyle. I mean, spectacular working class movie, but man, was that a fantastic movie of this working class guy who became kind of a vigilante. And then he also directed a great movie called Save the Tiger, right? With Jack Lemmon and who was it? Oh man, I forget who else was in that movie. But anyway, great movie. And then John also did Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Look at the body of work that John did. He had this amazing talent for doing these movies that looked like they cost $1 billion, but were really not extreme budgeted movies, you know? So I learned a lot from John, but we had material. We had good material. And so what I'm getting to about John is, one of the things I was concerned about as an actor is, and actors need to be sensitive. Why? Because what you're doing is, you are doing 2 things. You're promoting something, number one, by being in it and being a character in it. You're promoting a story by saying, you know, bang, I'm in this, so I agree with it, right? But what you're also doing is, you're setting a kind of tone socially. What does this mean when audiences see this, and they're going to see it all over the world? And I mean, I was young enough to be naive enough, but at the same time old enough. I 5 years of professional football. Even at 26, you know, you kind of been around a little bit. So I remember we were going to do the thing where Apollo Creed comes out for the first time, and you see him crossing the Delaware, and he's got the wig on and the whole thing, and he's throwing coins across the Delaware. And I said to John, man, I'm not real comfortable with this, you know. And John, why? What is it? He says, well, I said to him, you know, I don't want this character to look like a buffoon, because it's so easy to go in that direction, you know, bug-eyed and playing this minstrel kind of character, throwing coins across. And when you got that get-up with the white wig and the whole thing, it can get into that territory, right? And John, to his credit, said to me, I understand, but if it even comes close to that, I won't let it work. I will not put it in the film. And I trusted him because we'd worked together long enough then, you know? And to his credit, he shot it beautifully. I did my best to convey what it was this character who puts on a show, much like Ali did, you know? But that he did it with a certain amount of dignity, because that was important to me. I want my sons, when they see me do something, to never ask me, Pop, why did you do that? You know? And I don't want your son to ask that question either. Because if I do it that way, and they ask that question, what I'm promoting is not what I'm about, right? So John Avildsen, really, I respected and I learned a lot from with just that interaction with him. And of course, the movie is great, so what can you say there, you know?
let's go with you right here in the front. Yeah.
Kind of playing off a little bit of what you just said about social commentary in the Times. First of all, thank you so much for the role, because for me, I know growing up it was one of the few times I saw somebody on a major stage in a major role, kind of portraying something that was bigger than the movie. So I appreciate being able to see that. But as a 26-year-old, when I look back at it now, how did it feel to have to kind of carry that weight in a role like that beyond the movie and into your regular life through all the times, the sequels and everything else?
Yeah.
How was that as a person to just have to carry?
That's a brilliant question, man. Because that is something you have to deal with, whether you realize it or not. You know, I've said this many times. Most of us, and I would probably say it's in the 90 percentile, we're prepared for failure. From the very time we stand up and walk, what do? We fall over. We're prepared for failure. What we aren't prepared for is success. And there are not a lot of people who really believe that they're going to succeed. They just don't. Because if they did, man, we'd be in a far better place, I think, socially. Because then you wouldn't try to keep somebody else down if you thought you were going to make it, despite what's going on, right? So I was lucky again because of sports. I succeeded so many times against the odds. Think about sports. I say this completely, always, to everybody, anybody who will hear. It is the most egalitarian part of our lives. Why? Nobody gives a damn at the end of the day about anything but winning or losing. You think about that. Nobody goes to a stadium, to a sporting event, nobody goes and says, oh, he's pretty good, that's why I'm coming. No, you go to cheer for them to win, whoever it is, and cheer against the other team because you don't want them to win, right? So in sports, you learn from very early on, if he and I are on opposite sides of the line, and we're vying for basically the same position or opposite positions, whoever beats whoever, that's who won. The distinction is simple. You don't have to say, oh, well, I like him better. That's not business. Business doesn't work that way. You win or you lose. The winners reap the benefits, okay? In life, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, the winners reap the benefits. And that doesn't mean you have to necessarily be a cheat. But man, what is. And so with that role as an example, I remember distinctly, and it taught me one of those lessons in life. We did the premiere in New York City, Manhattan. The day before the movie opens, Rocky opens, I'm walking down the street like anybody else in Manhattan. Nobody pays attention to me. It's just another guy walking down the street in Manhattan. The morning after, walking down the street in Manhattan, I'd seen the movie like everybody else and loved what I saw, but I had vendors, those guys with those carts yelling out, "Yo, Apollo!" Whoa! You were not prepared for that. I mean, going from anonymity, to, wait a minute, I'm being recognized? That's scary as hell. I'm telling you, it really is. Because you're not prepared for that. You're not prepared to be walking down the street in Manhattan and have people recognize you and point you out. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And it took a while to get used to that. But clearly now, I love it.
Right here, sir, and then we'll get you next.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay. Talk about your time on Predator and working with other huge actors.
Huge is
Huge personalities.
Huge personality. Oh, believe me, they were huge personalities, no question. Well, it was a lot of fun because, again, so many of those guys, obviously, Arnold, Jesse, Bill Duke, really accomplished. I mean, in whatever realms we walked in, right? But I was accomplished also. None of those guys had been in the NFL, all right? That's a whole nother animal. I don't care who you are. Because what's the percentage of people in on this planet who make it in the NFL? I mean, that to me, like, I didn't even realize it at the time. But I was on the same footing, so I'm dealing with these massive egos, these massive bodies, and loving every minute of it, because I dealt with that, you know, all my life, being in there with guys, you know, grab acid and slapping towels and in the shower and, you know, beating on somebody when, you know, especially when you got them down, just beat the hell out of them when you got them down, right? So these guys, I mean, you know, man, they would cut you no slack. And if you weren't, you know, competitive in that nature, forget it. You'd be run over. You know, and then we're, of course, in the jungles of Puerto Vallarta, which doesn't sound like the deep, deep jungle, but I tell you, you go out there all day long and you're in that hot sun and all that, people don't realize how much dust there is in the jungle. There's all that pollen and, I mean, it's just, man, you know, and detritus on the ground from all the leaves falling. You walk and it's just like, you know, a powder cake, you know, just constantly floating up in your face. But there we are sweating and grab assing and doing what we're doing and trying to look manly in front of the camera. And bless John McTiernan. And oh my God, great DP from Down Under in that cast that we had all around. I mean, you know, Shane Black, who was a great screenwriter, who wrote Lethal Weapon and so many others, was, you know, in that cast. We were just on fire, having such a great time, and we had a great producer. You know, probably one of the most celebrated and notorious at the same time, and Joel Levy. You know, I'm sorry, Joe Silver. Joel Levy was an executive at Fox at the time. So we were, you know, Larry Gordon was involved, who was an amazing producer of note. And it was just great timing again. So what was it like? It was insanely great. I mean, fun, and how can young guys not 2 months in Puerto Vallarta? I mean, come on. You love that, you know, great location.
No, thanks. And then you're gonna be our last one here.
Thank you. Hi, Carl.
Hi.
Pleasure to be here. Ask this question. As a young actor and athlete, what was the main source of inspiration for you? Was it like music? Was it other actors? Basically, what got you going? What motivated you as a, you know, as an artist, as an athlete, as an actor?
Yeah. Well, a lot of things. You mentioned music. That was one of the first things, one of my first loves, actually. I sang with bands since I was in, well, since I was in junior high school. You know, I had a pretty decent voice and even recorded for a couple of labels, but that's a whole nother story. But there's something that we hear a lot of times, and we hear actors say this, and I believe it is absolutely true. And today more than ever, you see examples of it. If you don't have examples, then you don't believe that you can do it. I mean, you really think about that, you know? If you wanted to be a mathematician, well, looking at actors isn't going to necessarily inspire you to be a mathematician. But if you see great mathematicians and you start to learn what they did and how they did it, then guess what? There's an example for you of maybe the road to follow. And without a doubt, as a young black kid in this country, let's be real, there weren't a lot of great examples for me growing up. We're talking pre the so-called civil rights era, right? But I remember one of the first movies I saw, which I'm really making myself sound as old as I am now, was Sidney Poitier in Lilies of the Field. And let me tell you, that made an impact. That made a heck of an impact. And then I remember seeing him in The Defiant Ones with Tony Curtis. And again, what an impact. And then I saw other actors, one of whom gets seldom mentioned, but there was something about this guy on screen, a man named Woody Strode, who was in Spartacus, who was the the one, what are they called? In Spartacus, the guys who fight gladiators. Yeah, thank you very much. One of the gladiators in this beautiful, I mean, if you want to really give yourself a treat, look at that physical specimen that was Woody Strode. I met him when he was probably just a few years younger than I am now, and he still was, I mean, like 6'3" and just sculpted. He was an athlete at UCLA, was an All-American, I think, was there when Jackie Robinson and people like that were there, was a decathlete, I think, football player, but I mean, one of the most magnificent physical specimens that I've ever seen on film. So those kind of people, when I saw early on, you know, you look at that and you say, oh, that guy looks like me. I could possibly do that. That's why it's so necessary for every kid to have an example. I mean, we look at movies today, and particularly I know now what's happening is, like Crazy Rich Asians, what has that done for the Asian community? You know, it could have been just a bunch of caricatures, but you bought into not only the people, those characters, but the culture. So every kid, whether you're Latino, whether you're African American, whether you're Asian, whether you're, you name it, you know, if you're Nordic, to see some people who look like you is important. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where I got all that inspiration from, those people on their shoulders, you know.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming out here this weekend and for being part of this Q&A. Always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Weathers!